In the northwestern New Mexico desert, miles from the nearest city or town, lie the ancient ruins of Chaco Canyon. Constructed 1,000 years ago by the ancestral Puebloans, or Anasazi, this complex of multi-story great houses, enormous kivas, and broad roads that serve as spokes to distant outlying towers present an enduring mystery to modern archaeologists. Its builders left no written records as to why they came here, what purpose this place served, or why it was abandoned. Aside from the artifacts unearthed from its sands, all we have to go on is the enchanting yet enigmatic architecture and artwork that remain. But with an open mind, perhaps that's enough. The multitude of geocosmic alignments and celestial-themed rock art found here suggest this was a place to study and worship alignment of earth, sky, and spirit. Was it a laboratory, observatory, temple, pilgrimage site, or all of these? Join me on a tour of Pueblo Bonito, the most iconic structure in Chaco Canyon. Together we'll walk in the footsteps of the ancient ones, scaffolded by the same timeless and fundamental elements that guided them, dissolving the bonds of space and time between us to connect on a psychic level rooted in a universal truth, that we all come from and are part of the one. Welcome back, fellow explorers. Let's continue our journey. It was late afternoon when I hiked west to the archaeological site of Pueblo Bonito in Chaco Canyon. I had just finished a walking tour of Chaco Canyon, another impressive structure in downtown Chaco. Now I looked forward to continuing my summer solstice exploration of the most iconic ruins of this ancient and mysterious place. It was still sunny and hot, with temperatures in the mid-90s. However, the intense glare of midday was starting to give way to a softer, warmer glow. My heart beat faster as I approached the D-shaped great house, perhaps sensing that something hidden or mystical awaited me. According to the National Park Service, Pueblo Bonito is the most important site in the canyon and a must for all visitors. It is the most thoroughly investigated and celebrated cultural site in Chaco Canyon. Planned and constructed in stages between AD 850 to AD 1150 by ancestral Puebloan peoples, this was the center of the Chacoan world. Although the NPS trail map shows a 0.6-mile loop around the site, I had the entire place practically to myself, and so I spent several hours roaming freely around and within, delving into passages and peering over walls, hardly seeing another person. Pueblo Bonito means beautiful town in Spanish, but its original name will probably never be known. Some sources claim that the site contains 32 kivas, 3 great kivas, and over 350 ground floor rooms, while another source identifies a total of 650 rooms. Its northern, rounded periphery seems to have comprised 4 stories. A large road approaches the site from the north, while to the south, directly across the canyon, lies Casa Rinconada. In the weeks after I returned home, I learned that more than a dozen skeletons were uncovered from a burial crypt at Pueblo Bonito by archaeologists in the late 1800s, along with carved wooden flutes and ceremonial staffs. The remains were later determined to span 330 years, and one modern investigation concluded that DNA from the skeletons pointed to a single maternal ancestor. This suggests a tiered Chaco community that was perhaps ruled by a matrilineal dynasty. It also echoes the belief by many experts today that this place was once inhabited by Chacoan royalty. Unlike at Chaco Canyon, a profusion of artifacts has been unearthed at Pueblo Bonito, including necklaces, bracelets, and other jewelry made up of thousands of turquoise and shell beads. But today I wandered the ruins with an open and carefree mind, less attuned to the interpretations of modern historians and scientists, and more interested in my own observations and intuition. I tried to feel rather than just think, and there's no question that this place has a spiritual feeling. It seems to me that Chaco Canyon is an example of sacred architecture, or what may be termed built myth. In other words, it is a spatial and temporal symbolization of myth and religion, the cultural and spiritual beliefs of an ancient people. The structures of Chaco, like those of Machu Picchu, Chichen Itza, Stonehenge, the pyramids, and countless other monuments, churches, shrines, temples, and monasteries built across human history, may have been a stage for accommodating and facilitating the enactment of myths through ritual. if they were, in fact, constructed to meet spiritual needs, then I believe it's important to study and understand them in this same context. I'm here in Pueblo Bonito in Chaco Canyon, and I've been exploring the passageways and the different rectangular and trapezoidal doors and windows and window niches, and many of these structures appear to have been second or even third story structures. It's a large complex. It's the biggest here at Chaco Canyon. And for me anyway, as always, there are lots and lots of questions that are really difficult to answer. Archaeologists for the last 100 years have been wondering, who were the Chacoans? Why did they come here? It's a harsh, desolate landscape. It's not very suitable for agriculture. What brought them here? And why did they build these structures that are oriented towards solar events, towards lunar events? The entire valley, it seems, is aligned with a 18 to 19 year lunar standstill, or a moon standstill that occurs every 18 and 19 years. But there are possibly alignments with the equinoxes. Many of these buildings, especially here at Pueblo Bonito, are aligned north-south, east-west. I've noticed that many of the doorways and windows align with the summer solstice sunset. Today's June 21st. So clearly the people that built this place understood that they were part of something bigger. And I can't help but wonder if they embraced the concept of as above, so below, that I've talked about in other videos. As above, so below. As within, so without. As with the universe, so the soul. This enigmatic expression stretches back to the Hermetic texts, a collection of 2,000-year-old teachings from ancient Egypt. They allegedly lay out the philosophy of Hermes Trismegistus, a somewhat shadowy figure who seems to have been a philosopher, astrologer, and alchemist. It is said that he was so wise that the Egyptians made him into one of their gods, Thoth. Nowadays, very little is actually known about this sage, or whether he even existed. But there's little denying that the Hermetic principles have been extremely influential to the development of philosophy, religion, and occult knowledge across the ages. The Hermetic philosophy, or Hermeticism, is a large and mysterious subject that goes well beyond the scope of this video. So bear with me as we review just a couple of basic ideas before explaining how they relate to Chaco Canyon. As above, so below refers to the second of 7 Hermetic principles, that all is connected and everything is part of the one. All matter and energy, all existence, everywhere and at all times, are ruled by the same laws, patterns, and designs, even if they may be expressed at vastly different scales. Imagine for a moment the atom, the building block of matter, with its cloud of electrons spinning around the nucleus. Now visualize the planets that orbit the sun, or the galaxies which spiral through the universe. You get the idea. It's all the same model, corresponding in composition, design, and motion, but at completely different sizes. Therefore, the concept of as above, so below is also known as the principle of correspondence. It is a law of nature, and because it applies everywhere, at all times, and across material, mental, and spiritual planes, it is universal. A corollary to this principle is the analogy of the macrocosm and microcosm. This relationship asserts a structural correspondence between the universe and human beings. In other words, both operate according to the same principles, even if at entirely different scales. Through acknowledgement and understanding of the macrocosm and microcosm, humans can apply their knowledge of themselves and various phenomena they observe here on Earth in order to understand the universe. And alternatively, humans can study the sky in order to map the human experience here on Earth. As above, so below. As below, so above. Now back to Chaco Canyon. This place seems to have been built as a monument to the principle of correspondence. Ancient Chacoans may have come here to celebrate the connection between themselves and the cosmos. between the physical designs and patterns observed across the desert and mountains, and in the stars and planets, with the spiritual journeys undertaken by each soul. Alignment is the central theme and purpose of this place. How do we know this? Through the architecture and artwork the Chacoans left, it's clear they studied the sky and celebrated a connection to it. A pictograph at Peñasco Blanco, somewhat of a hike from Pueblo Bonito, displays 3 images on a sandstone outcrop: a hand, crescent moon, and what may have been the sun, or a reference to a supernova event. At Casa Rinconada, which I highlight in my next video, a wall niche captures the morning rays of the summer solstice as framed through an alignment with a nearby window. Atop Fajada Butte, a spiral petroglyph marks solstices and equinoxes with slivers of sunlight. And in the buildings themselves, there exists a preponderance of geocosmic alignments that cannot be coincidental. Many Chacoan walls trend north and south, or east and west. Doors face the solstice sunrise or sunset. Corner windows may have focused the sun's rays at certain moments, or provided a focused view of a constellation, such as Pleiades. Some structures in Chaco Canyon even align with other sites many miles away. Pueblo Bonito's D-shaped layout appears to incorporate the golden rectangle, an example of sacred geometry that is strikingly similar to the approach used at Mesa Verde's Sun Temple, another ancestral Puebloan site. And as I mentioned earlier, the entire canyon seems to celebrate a major lunar standstill. But what was the purpose of it all? Even if the Chacoans understood the concept of as above, so below, why and how did they apply it here? I suspect Chaco Canyon served many purposes. First, it was likely an observatory for studying the sky. As I already pointed out, the Chacoans were able to mark and predict celestial events. Through their understanding of the law of correspondence, along with principles of geometry, Chacoans could have applied known laws and relationships here on Earth, along with observable events and patterns in the sky, to infer astronomical truths which they could not see. Basically, the architecture here, including the locations of several outlying sites, may have been constructed for the purpose of mapping the cosmos, something like a school or laboratory for studying astronomy. But I don't believe Chaco Canyon was just a place to study physical phenomena. It was not simply a laboratory of empirical science. Its architecture contains elements and patterns of the sacred that are fundamentally timeless and universal. Thomas Berry described such sacred places and the architecture they contain as built myth. Myths are metaphorical stories that contain universal themes which repeat across all cultures. They are built upon the psyche and contain certain shared archetypes. Correspondingly, sacred architecture is a spatial and temporal symbolization of myth. It transforms and represents mythic themes in plan, geometry, surface, form, and space. It is a three-dimensional canvas, a sculpture whose form and function conveys the experience shared by all humans. It utilizes symbolic images and spaces to bridge the psychic layers of the conscious and unconscious mind. Along these lines, people may have come to Chaco Canyon to study and practice sacred correspondence. Alignment of themselves and the earth, sky, physical and spiritual, all part of the one. Perhaps this place was a monastery for priests or shamans. Shamanism seems to have played an important role in ancient Puebloan society, as it did with the Incas and many other peoples around the world. And the principle of correspondence is a central tenet of shamanism. Universal laws of nature apply everywhere and at all times, even if most people are not attuned to these through their physical senses. The shaman is someone who possesses the ability to develop a heightened state of perception or awareness. He or she can transcend the physical plane and apparent limitations of time and space, tap into the universality of all existence, and move around from one state of being or time to another. The word shaman actually means skywalker. Thus, sacred places like Chaco Canyon may have been dwellings and temples for such shamans or skywalkers, where they lived, prayed, studied, and applied the principle of sacred correspondence, of alignment between above and below, in order to explore other dimensions and share that wisdom with their people. Chaco Canyon may also have been a temple or church, perhaps a pilgrimage site, where ordinary people could come to connect with something greater. Going back to Barry, he explains that, in addition to symbolizing the belief system, sacred architecture acts as a stage that accommodates and facilitates the enactment of the myth through ritual. In other words, the design of Chaco Canyon may have enabled certain practices or ceremonies that helped the initiate to align with his or her correspondence to the universal. The warm sandstones, narrow winding corridors, high-ceilinged or open-air rooms, subterranean chambers, and numerous kivas and staircases may have helped a worshiper or young apprentice to transcend and elevate consciousness. Even the inexplicable T-shaped doors found here evoke a sense of balance. I can't help but wonder if initiates may have had to carry buckets of water or other weighted items across their shoulders to evoke and tap into a sense of balance and alignment as they crossed through one sacred space and into another. Just as today's church or mosque rituals help to connect the worshiper with the divine, the layout and symbolic elements of structures like Pueblo Bonito may have helped to guide the Chacoan through the steps of reflection, appreciation, and at-one-ment, or, to use a framework from mythology, departure, initiation, and return. To summarize, there seems little doubt that one function of Chaco Canyon was to study the sky. But because it also contains the characteristics of sacred architecture, it seems to have been intended and used for spiritual purposes as well. Therefore, to truly understand it, we must also adopt a spiritual mindset. To attempt to decipher this place using only science and reason is not enough. It limits our awareness to one plane, one dimension of thought. We must tap into the timeless and universal themes that repeat across all cultures, and which is rooted in our subconscious psyches, if we want to develop a comprehensive understanding of Chaco's history and meaning. If this all sounds too existential, supernatural, or far out, that's okay. You don't need to be a shaman, or a metaphysicist, or a professor of ancient religions or sacred architecture to grasp the meaning or magic of Chaco Canyon. This place was built to teach. It contains symbols and energies that all humans can sense and relate to. If you go there, you will feel it, and you will understand it. Maybe not explicitly or in a way you can easily describe in words, but you will know it nonetheless. You will appreciate the beauty of its landscape, the warm hues of the stone walls, and the timeless truths they speak. Even if we may be culturally and technologically different from the people who laid these stones centuries ago, our psychic needs are remarkably similar. Chaco Canyon is truly an example of built myth. It is a place every person can visit to tap into and appreciate our connection, correspondence to, and alignment with all things, great and small, once and forever. I hope you'll join me in the next episode when I explore the ruins of Quincletzo, then venture up and out of the canyon to visit the Pueblo Alto complex, and finally head across the canyon to check out Casa Rinconada and its famous summer solstice-aligned wall niche.